this computer. Hello, everyone. My name is David Rothstein, and I'm a wedding band leader here in Chicago. We have a music company, David Rothstein Music, and welcome to our Facebook page called Unplanned. And this is a program, a group that I started to be able to have all the wedding vendors and people in the events industry kind of talk amongst each other and find some experts that can come in and give us some insights and some great information and some ways of dealing with this so that we can come out of this situation with our businesses still intact and our brains still intact and hopefully maybe even some ways, you know, a little bit stronger, having learned a lot about different aspects of everything that we do and not just business as usual. So I know that everybody is suffering, and we're getting into here at the end of October, one of the, maybe even the toughest time of the entire ordeal of COVID and stuff. So we have one of our great friends, one of my great friends, and certainly somebody that's been a real friend to everybody in the events industry and for everybody in the state of Illinois, State Representative Ann Williams. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me today, and hello to everyone that's watching.
And we have Lauren, who is going to be helping out, doing some research, perhaps behind the scenes and everything like that, to help us get all the information that we need. So last time we spoke, I believe it was just at the beginning of things. It was like in April or May, and we were all really, you know, getting nervous, really what's going on. And we've had some ups, we've had some downs. And first of all, how are you doing personally with all this, besides being a state representative? I mean, it's got to be something that we forget, that all these representatives are and legislatures are people too, and they are dealing with it in the same way that we are. And so how are you doing with all this stuff, Ann?
Well, thank you for asking that question. I'm doing fine. Like everyone, I'm hanging in, and it seems like really just going day to day, because that's really all we can do right now. And but really empathetic to, or sympathetic to, what people in the industry are going through. What we've done since the pandemic started really is to try and problem solve and gather information for people that reach out to us, whether it's about a school issue, about a small business issue, or an event, what parameters they need to follow, sharing needs and concerns so we can convey that to the decision makers in the executive branch. So we're really trying to serve as a liaison between the community and the governor's office when it comes to setting some of these standards. So I'm doing fine. I'm hanging in there, and really hopeful, like everybody, that we science figures out how to get through this quicker and in a way that gets us back to normal soon.
And absolutely, and it's something that has affected all aspects of our lives, you know, and it's a daily thing, and also the big picture aspect of what we're doing. And for the events industry, it is, as we're getting into the winter months now, the capacity for doing outdoor events is obviously greatly diminished, and that's certainly taking its toll as well. Where are we at in terms of legally for doing events in the state of Illinois as of October 27th, 2020?
Well, I don't have all the answers as to every single question, so I wanted to start by putting that out there. That's one of the reasons Lauren, who's my chief of staff, is on board. If there are specific questions that people have, we are happy to help find the resources, because every question and inquiry seems a little bit different. But I can say generally, the governor seems to be utilizing a bit of a different approach than when we first started the pandemic. Obviously, at first, we needed to suppress the spread, control the spread, figure out what we were dealing with in March and April and May. Now that we've had a little bit more time to kind of understand how the virus works, the governor's developed several regions throughout the state and utilized more of a regional approach when it comes to mitigation efforts. So you probably saw the news a couple days ago. We're still working through what that means for everyone, but several states or several counties or areas have undergone some mitigation strategies. Chicago also did its own set of rules that the mayor has enforced. So it really varies by region now. Instead of using a one size fits all approach, which was something that people, not just in your industry, but in the hospitality industry, in business, and even residents said wasn't really appropriate, he listened and he decided to utilize a regional approach. So we have, I think, I don't know, how many regions do we have? 12 regions in the state, something like that. And based on the numbers, which include number of cases, hospitalizations, unfortunately deaths, as well as the positivity rate, those are all taken into account when making decisions as to what's open, what needs to be closed, sometimes temporarily. So it really varies depending on the area, but much more of a regional approach.
And I think that's the way we really have to do it, because there are so many variations in terms of population, access to hospitals, access to information, really. And I think if we just kind of treat everybody all the same, some people are going to lose, some people are going to, really miss out on some opportunities. But information is such a key right now. And if anybody would like some great information, you can go to a place called Restore Illinois, and it's got all the gathering guidelines. There are some things there that you can check out. So if you go to, actually, I will post this in the link, because it's rather than read this for you, which was not quite as entertaining. So the great information is there. And as Ann said, things are changing constantly. So it's important to educate yourself, find out what's right for where you're living, what the situation is. And I imagine there's got to be a great deal of coordination with what's happening when you have when you live in a state that has a place like Chicago, but also has a majority of it is tiny little towns, especially downstate and central Illinois, and gathering all that information, taking all that data, and being able to process it quickly. And I imagine, since now we've had this basically about 7 or 8 months, we do have developed some patterns as to what to do with this information. So getting the most accurate, up-to-date information has got to be a big part of what you guys are doing, not just gathering, but also analyzing what do we do with this, and making sure you're making the best decisions, based on the information that you're getting.
And the challenging thing, I think, for both officials on the state as well as local level is the fact that they don't always know the answers. They can't just snap their fingers and have everything fall into place. This is a new challenge for everyone every step of the way. But I wanted to make a point about the regional approach and the fact that we're kind of seeing some stops and starts. And that can be frustrating too, because I know in your industry, you depend on certainty, you depend on making plans in advance. You don't just have a wedding just unplanned, as the name of your group suggests, but you have planning and efforts and investment and organization that goes into it. But I was reading an article last night, I think it was in Politico, overview on what some experts expect as the vaccine starts to be hopefully in the mix and as the pandemic evolves. And the conversation really described what we're already dealing with, which is some forward movement, some steps backwards. We'll see the experts anticipate we'll see some outbreaks, but then we'll see them subside. And this will happen throughout the country, actually throughout the world at different points. So I think we have to get comfortable with a level of uncertainty and an inability to know what the future holds in a way that we're just not used to. And that, I think, will be challenging for people. I know with your industry, you make plans based on agreements and contracts and dates and a lot of set parameters and metrics. And I think it's going to take creativity. Luckily, you're a creative bunch, and we'll be able to, I think, figure it out over time. But it is certainly going to be a challenge, not just the virus part, but the uncertainty part.
And I think a big part of it right now is figuring out what are the things that I can control. Like the things I can wear a mask every day. I can wash my hands. I can avoid certain situations. I can use social distancing. I can make decisions that are realizing that we do have certain controls of things we can do, at least to protect ourselves. And hopefully, you will encourage everybody else, everybody else around you to be doing those same types of simple things. And certainly no one has a vaccine or a quick fix right now, but I think we have to really make that a normal thing, that we just have, keys, wallet, glasses, and our mask, so that we do feel it. And it's such a shame that masks have somehow become a political issue in some ways. And it's just kind of like, why would we use seatbelts or stop at stoplights or, not smoke in restaurants anymore? Because there's a greater good. And for that to become an issue where it's something, well, some people prefer to do it, some people don't. And I think that's really one of the biggest crimes that's going on, is that people are seeing it as an optional thing, where you're not doing it just for yourself, you're doing it for other people. And it's hard for me to understand, and I'm sure it's incredibly frustrating from a political stance to have to deal with that. I mean, that should be the baseline, right? I mean, it's got to be, how do you deal with that reality that you're in right now?
Well, I think you make a great point. I'll see some comment made by maybe a politician in some state or someone saying something on social media. It's like they forget that it's an infectious disease. And it doesn't matter if you choose not to wear a mask somewhere. If you and your family are infected, going to infect others. That's the nature of the whole infectious disease pandemic thing. And it's almost as if people are completely ignoring the science of what that means. And by not listening to science, we're creating a whole host of problems. We didn't listen to scientists when they warned us the pandemic was possible. I think just a year ago yesterday, one of our presidential candidates, the one that I'll be supporting, this out here, said that we had dismantled the pandemic response task force, and that's in 2019, before there was a pandemic. So hopefully things like that will start to be put into place, and we will be protecting ourselves for the future, and God forbid the next pandemic, because I'm hoping this is a one-off, but looking through history, I don't think it is. We know now what can happen, so we should take steps. But not to get too political, I did want to make one comment, I think, to your listeners, and that is to acknowledge that I understand, and my colleagues and I understand, that your industry has been hit harder, if not the hardest of any industry, because of the pandemic. And your world really has been shut down in a way that many others haven't. And I personally can't imagine how challenging that must be for you. You are used to being part of large family gatherings and celebratory times, and that's exactly what we've all been unable to partake in, and one of the things we miss the most. So on a personal and professional level, I just want you to understand that we do hear that. We understand the devastation that the industry is facing. We are open and interested in opportunities to help, whether we can do anything now or whether it happens as we evolve past the pandemic and out and back to the times that we can gather again. We will continue to listen, and we will be mindful of the fact that you will need help, you will need assistance and resources to get back on your feet. And we want nothing more than to have that happen, because what you stand for are celebrating the most important times in life, and we want to be a part of that, and we want to make sure you thrive and grow and are able to sustain through these dark times.
I really appreciate it. And speaking on behalf of all the members and all the people in the events industry, we really appreciate you recognizing that. And I think it's something that is 100% true, because I've lost 95% of our work this year, and it's gone to, either cancellations or postponements or things like doing things for 2021. But there's obviously no guarantee for that as well, just because we, change the calendar. And the one thing that I think is important for us to recognize is that the virus doesn't care what you think about it. It doesn't care if you live in a blue state or a red state, or if you're tired of wearing a mask, or you need to just make a living and I'm just going to 100% just do this anyway. The virus doesn't understand state laws or legislature or policies or zones. It just wants to infect us. And, that's the thing. It's like you can be as mad as you want, but the virus really doesn't care. So, us as an industry, I think we've done a good job supporting each other in terms of doing what we can to do micro weddings or to find other ways of getting through this. But it is certainly something that no one saw coming, and it's something that's we're all going to have to continuously find new ways to do this. Now, one of the things that I'm seeing a lot of is that people are now going to other states where the laws are much more, let's say, lenient. So they're taking their Illinois wedding, they're going to Indiana, and they're having 200, 250 person weddings, or Wisconsin, where the law is they allow people to have giant events. And we've turned down, I think, 7 weddings where people wanted us to perform on a stage. And one bride said she wanted it to be like 2018. It was like, so would I. But unfortunately, I live in reality, where you can't do that. And so I imagine it's got to be, frustrating. At least it is for me, to see other surrounding states that are not keeping up with the basic laws of science. And so how do you deal with that? Or are you just really 100% focused on just Illinois? But it's got to be tricky.
Well, I think you're right on. I mean, the virus doesn't recognize boundaries of state boundaries, and no infectious disease does. And I know the governor and other officials have expressed concern, especially in the border areas toward Wisconsin and Indiana. It just, I think, for me, it's common sense that we need a federal response to this. Well, the virus, as I've heard so often, our economy and our lives will not get back to normal until the virus is under control. That's just the reality of it. History shows that with prior pandemics, and it's just common sense. The longer we wait to address this and pretend it doesn't exist and keep pushing the limits despite science warning us that that's a bad idea, the longer we're going to prolong the misery, the economic devastation, and the public health damage. So it just doesn't make sense the way we're operating. It's not even a matter of science or expertise in infectious disease. As you said, it's just common sense. If a disease spreads through in-person contact, and that's proven now, having a wedding with 250 people is incredibly dangerous and irresponsible, in my opinion. And I can't imagine wanting to celebrate and risk your friends and family like that.
Right.
Being said, we're clearly at a place where many people, for whatever reason, are ignoring those realities. And I'm hopeful that we have some leadership on the federal level that will provide for a little more responsibility, knowing, however, that we will evolve our response to address problem areas. Hopefully over time, when we suppress this a little, right now we're still going up, but when we get through the darkest part, we can then use more of a targeted mitigating approach to address problem areas. And that's how we'll eventually get out of it. But the longer we stay with the virus raging, I think the longer it will be till we'll get to a place where we can relax a little bit.
And what message would you say to venues and some vendors that are participating, even in Illinois, and having 100-person, 200-person, 150-person events? And they're like, oh, well, we'll play games. We'll do, 50 people in one room, and then have a room, 30 feet away, and call that a separate thing. And just playing all these games with stuff. And or some people that are just blatantly saying, hey, catch us if you can.
Yeah.
And what would you say to those vendors? I mean, I understand people need to make a living. I get that. But in terms of the big picture of us recovering from this, what kind of message would you say?
I think that's a short-term fix that's going to result in long-term suffering and pain. I mean, you're tempting fate if you do that. If you have one person that gets sick, or if your event turns into a super spreader event, they just had something in one of the suburbs, a volleyball tournament, an indoor-outdoor thing where someone got sick, and I don't know how that business will ever recover. I've seen business owners on the news, and I get that they're struggling. I understand how devastating it can be. But there's got to be ways as we learn more about how the virus works to provide opportunities where we can. No one in government wants to shut down business. We want nothing more than it to thrive. But we understand that we have to do that in a way that's safe. And many business owners in the community I represent are very focused on that. Some of my biggest champions for wearing masks and socially distancing are bar owners and brewery owners right here in my neighborhood. And I am so proud to know them and so grateful that they want to operate. They want to make money. They want to be a part of our community, but they want to do it in a socially responsible way because they know if you're careful now, it'll be just that much sooner we'll be able to go back to gatherings and communing together and enjoying uh, life like a little bit more like we used to. But I think it's just a matter of common sense. None of us are public health experts. None of us understand how infectious disease operates. And certainly many people don't understand yet how COVID operates. So we have to, I think, use a conservative approach and a wait and see, as painful as it is, just so we can survive this surge.
Absolutely. And I think along those lines, Ann, it's important to support the people that are trying to do the right thing. The restaurants, and some of the mom pop type of stores, if you can buy dinner at the place down the street as opposed to going to Applebee's or some, giant chain, the giant chains are going to be fine. But those little places down the street that you always love to go to, if you don't support them now, they may not be around even when everything is better. So, I encourage everybody to look out for those businesses that you've enjoyed, because there is a real danger of us living in a homogenized society where we buy everything from Target or Walgreens or CVS or Best Buy, and the restaurants we go to have 6,000 chains nationwide. So we have to protect the individualism, and the same thing with the wedding industry. I mean, these are not giant conglomerates that are doing this. These are individual people like me that are trying to do their craft and to make it something special and not just a conveyor belts type of operation. So really support the little people, the little companies that are trying to do things the right way.
I do think we need, on that note too, David, I think we need to keep pushing our federal representatives. I was really sorry to see the events that happened yesterday where the Senate dropped everything to push through a Supreme Court nominee
Right.
a week before an election, but yet
Insane.
companies like yours and wedding vendors, similar wedding vendors, small businesses everywhere are desperate for additional funds and programs to help bridge the gap until we can start operating again. And that, to me, I'm a state representative. We don't have the ability to fund like the federal government does, but that should be a priority. And I'm really sickened to see that we have let that ball drop at a time when people are really starting to struggle. It's getting cold out in many parts of the country. This is when you need not just the financial help, but I think the confidence that we will be there for you and government will find a way to help you bridge to the next phase, because without that, I got to imagine it's very difficult to stay optimistic and positive. So that's another, even though I'm a state level official, I am pushing and working as best I can to get something done on the federal level by supporting our federal officials to do so. It's just critical that they take that next step. And without that, I mean, the reality is you need the resources and we need to get those to you ASAP.
Absolutely. I think the priorities are definitely a bit backwards, and to find out yesterday that the government has basically given up on actually fighting the fighting the virus and just saying, oh, it's an airborne virus, we can't deal with it. We're going to focus on the treatment after you get it. That's what we're really going to focus on. In the meantime, it's just mind-boggling I mean, he basically said what everybody knows is going on, but to have it verbalized is just so shocking. And
Well, we've been on the same page on this from day one, and I appreciate
I know.
you being a leading voice on this, because I know it's got to be hard. I mean, you are right there in the center of the industry that is being impacted the most. And I, really hope and I
Yeah.
hope and all hope that we can help you bridge that gap and all your colleagues.
Yeah, I hope we can all just kind of be reasonable. And that's the thing is like, I think we have to stop living kind of in extremes where people are saying we need to completely shut down every business. We need to just lock our doors, hide in the basement. Either that or we just walk around with no masks and just hug everybody and pretend it doesn't exist. I mean, I think the key word is just reasonableness, and finding about, what steps can we take to be able to function our businesses and within the parameters that we can and be healthy. And we should, support them. And then as opposed to just, saying that either we have to shut down the entire economy of the United States or we just let everything go 100% wide open, isn't like reasonableness, shouldn't that be, I mean, kind of the law of the land? I mean, that's
Yeah.
otherwise we would never survive as a society if we didn't have, maybe we can do a micro wedding, or maybe we can do, a small, 20-person wedding now. And then, like we talked about earlier, doing a full wedding, in 2021 or 2022. Just find some reasonableness so that we can still function as much as we can and still protect ourselves.
Well, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Um, to that, I do have several friends. I have at least three friends that have gotten married without a big wedding that maybe they would have had otherwise. I have a friend just getting married, I think I mentioned on Friday, and he promised, oh, we'll have a big celebration later. And I think that people really plan to. Um, is that what you're hearing too? And I mean, hopefully, whenever that time comes and you've been able to bridge to that time, and hopefully many of the vendors can sustain through the time without. Are you hearing that a lot from people? Because I am, just anecdotally.
Yeah, absolutely. People are doing, and that fits right into what we were talking about, and doing a violin piano duo for a ceremony, maybe a jazz trio for like a cocktail and dinner. And then, year and a half from now, they're planning a 14-piece orchestra, but they just basically want to be married now. And that is absolutely acceptable. And that's, I think a lot of people just want to be married, and we'll take care of the celebration part a little bit later. But we have to sacrifice a little bit now so that we can get to those celebrations. Because if we just want to do these celebrations now and like put everybody you love in jeopardy, I mean that's not what you want to do. So yeah, absolutely, micro weddings are still going, and it's a reasonable concession to make so that you can still get married and then celebrate later.
Well, I'll be looking forward to seeing how your wedding plans evolve.
I'll have to think about how we're going to figure that out too. So that is
Well, if you've gone back and forth from the wedding to actually be in the band too, but
right, right. I'll introduce myself, then I'll run over, and that will be a little bit tricky for sure. But yeah, so this is a very interesting time, and of course now as we get into the holiday months, a lot of people are thinking about Halloween. Of course, Thanksgiving is a huge situation, and then Christmas. And it is very, I mean, Thanksgiving, I think, is probably my favorite holiday because it's something that just includes everybody, every walk of life. There's no religious aspect to it, and it's just something that we all just kind of take a deep breath and love to see cousins and people we haven't seen in a long time. But this year, obviously, that is a far different situation. So, I mean, I'm sure people are asking you, like, do you think how are we going to handle the holidays? I mean, it's tricky.
I was reading some of the public health guidance over the last couple of days that is just kind of hot off the presses. And many of the guidance is similar to what we've already been hearing. Keep gatherings small, ideally to the immediate family in your household. For those of us that live alone, that's a little more challenging. I mean, I don't know, I could eat a whole turkey or a pie, but so, but keeping it small where you can, and, just adhering to the public health guidelines, and, really mitigating your own personal risk. You can't eliminate all risk in life, but unless you stay in your basement, but you can take some steps. I think one thing I thought of, a friend of mine sent me an article about a tradition. I don't know if it's in Norway or Iceland or one of those Scandinavian countries, and their Christmas Eve tradition, if you celebrate Christmas, is to exchange books as gifts and read in bed, eating chocolates all night. I'm like, you know what? That does not sound like the worst way to spend Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve. For me, I'm not much of a going out person on New Year's Eve anyway. And I thought, maybe not that exact thing, but maybe there are ways that families or individuals can find kind of fun new traditions that they can take from other cultures and try and work those in and celebrate holidays you might not normally celebrate, or just find ways to make what time you do it together with a more limited group special and different and novel. I don't have kids, but I'm imagining that's going to be really challenging for families with kids that are used to doing certain traditions in the holidays. But people are creative. We're amazingly resilient, and
Yes.
we'll figure it out.
Maybe Zoom giving.
That sounds good. Do I still have to cook, or how does that work?
Well, you could actually get one of those, like those perfect, like those model homes, like they have the plate of the fake fruit and stuff like that. You can get a fake turkey. Say, hey, look, isn't this great? And you don't have to taste it or anything. And
Eat popcorn like I usually do.
yeah, you can definitely do it. I do think that people are, really resilient, and I do wish that our president, had a little bit more confidence in us, that he didn't want us to panic, and then decided not to tell anybody. And because he thought we would just like completely freak out, like we would not be able to deal with this. I just think that's, I mean, imagine like going to your car mechanic and the guy is inspecting your car and he realizes your brakes are about to go out and he says, well, it doesn't say anything. And so here's your car, everything's good to go. And then you get into an accident and you get injured, or your family and your car gets injured. Would you go back and say, oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you not telling me about that. I'm glad I wouldn't want to have to worry about that or panic. I mean, that's basically kind of what happened. But maybe that's another story, but that's how I feel about it. It's incredibly, like, none of this, a majority of this didn't have to happen.
Yeah, we could go on and on about the missteps and the problems, but hopefully
Yes.
we'll move forward with a new chapter, even though we're dealing with this challenge in a more unified way. I will note, Lauren, my chief of staff, has put some links in the chat. I don't know if you can get those or we can follow up with you after,
Yep.
but those contain a lot of the new information that's just come out in terms of some of the mitigation efforts in other counties. I hesitated to kind of explain what was going on in each of them because it does vary. I don't think they provided much guidance to gatherings and events that might be weddings, but you would go back to the original meeting and social event guidelines that I think I shared with you.
Yes.
For Illinois piece. So for now, that's the what we're operating under, but any individual questions can be directed to any of your elected officials, and they can reach out to the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity is kind of who's oversees all this, and they found them to be very responsive. If you have specific events or specific questions.
Perfect. And I will go ahead and post all of those things on it when I post this video, so you guys can go. And if you do have some specific questions, follow-up things that you'd like to ask, Lauren will be more than happy to pass along your information, and I'll include her contact information if that's okay. They'd be able to reach out to you. And
sure, do our best.
And is very down to earth. And my prediction is that someday you will be governor of Illinois.
I don't know.
You certainly have my votes, right, Lauren? I think she's pretty terrific. And not only are you incredibly, brilliant and experienced, but you have a very caring quality to you and very sincere quality to you that I think is remarkable and something that we all need these days. So
thank you so much. That's a huge compliment. I appreciate that. And I've enjoyed working with you, and I enjoyed the Zoom call we had early on with your folks, because you really can't meet really a nicer group of people that are in your industry. I mean, it's a positive, upbeat group that are faced with a lot of significant challenge right now. So just thinking of you and wishing you all the best.
I really appreciate that. So any last words that you'd like to I mean, I really appreciate you coming on, and Lauren, for all of your behind the scenes work and put everything all together. And you are welcome on this, our program anytime. And as we all make our way through this, everybody, just please wear your masks, and we will get through this, as we've gone through all kinds of different things. But the biggest thing is to reach out to each other, and I know some of you guys may feel a little bit alone and frustrated, but there are resources. You can always contact myself, or Ann, and Lauren will be happy to answer any questions you have. But we will get through this. We'll come out stronger. And so just wear your mask, keep your social distancing, look out for each other, and we will all get through this.
Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay well.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Have a great day, and we will talk again soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.